to share with you my favorite topic, which is, of course, digital dentures. But before we go to 2025, let's roll it way back to 1937. That was the year the Hindenburg exploded, the year Amelia Earhart took her infamous flight, FDR was president, and we began press packing polymethyl methacrylate dentures. And truly, this method of denture fabrication reigned supreme for nearly 100 years. And we just started to see kind of this revolution and changing and moving forward very recently. Um, we've been doing digital dentistry for quite a while. I know it's hard to believe, but Sarek turned 40 this year. So I am officially older than Sarek, although most of my dental students are not. I learned on this middle Sarek here. And so we've been really working with digital dentistry for a long time and seeing the evolution become more and more predictable and the materials, of course, becoming more and more efficient and strong and what we expect to see for our patients, high quality. Even digital dentures have been around since the 1990s. This is the proof of concept paper, so they were not commercially available yet, but certainly the idea was starting as early as 1994. And again, this is kind of the first proof of concept paper. It was something that was not really scalable. And again, as things have evolved and things have improved, we've started to see a bigger uptake. I always make my students read this manuscript. I call it now Classic Literature from 2012. And this was the first paper that really showed what we can do as private practice clinicians. So this was the first time that digital dentures became commercially available in 2012. And there were two different companies that were working with this. One was Avident, which kind of pioneered that milled denture workflow, and the other was Dentka, who is pioneering the printed denture workflow. So that's my quick history lesson in digital dentures. And I like to show this, especially to my students. If you look on the left, this is Yeezy making a denture in the 1920s. A lot of these torture-looking device instruments are very similar to what I learned on in dental school in prosthodontics, where we're establishing our central bearing pin with Gothic arch tracing and doing ear bow tracings. And if you look at the video on the right, this is one of the first digital dentures that I ever did. This is one of my patients from 2012. So what I love is when you do a side-by-side comparison to what we were teaching and doing and practicing in the 1920s compared to 2012, you can start to see how this all evolved. And to show you a little bit of my geeky side, the reason why I became interested in digital dentures and why I embraced this was when I saw the Gothic arch tracing being digitized. And so taking all these foundational elements that are in the classic literature that we read as prosthodontists and in the textbooks that have been edited and published and reinforced over many, many decades, those concepts are what really pushed the evolution of digital. So it's not something new, it's not something untested, it's something that took what we know, took the foundation, and then turned it around to make it more predictable in the hands of both clinicians and technicians. So to show how we got from 2012 without those two workflows to where we are today, we had so many improvements so quickly. So in 2015 was when we first saw the FDA clearance of printed resins for intraoral use. So we've now been seeing these in the mouth for over 10 years. We had many open source workflows in 2017. And to me, this was the key that kind of switched us from these very locked down workflows to something that everyone can embrace today. Because when I first started teaching digital dentistry back in the early 2010s, everything was locked down. This scanner only worked with this mill, or this resin only works with this printer. And so everything really started opening up in 2017 with a lot of these softwares like Exicad and Blue Sky Bio, Blender for Dental, and all these things that let you say, okay, I can design here and I can put it on any printer or any mill that I want. And then the scanner companies followed suit, where now you can take an STL from a scanner and export it to anything you want. So that really opened up so many workflows for technicians and clinicians, and we really saw this boom in production and what we're able to do. And last but not least, in 2019 is when we started to see the high impact printed resins. So with all these changes to hardware, software, materials, workflows, today you can really do anything you want. You can make a denture with any sort of material, any sort of workflow, follow in and out and weave these things together, which I think is super exciting. But if you're not familiar with both the conventional and the digital workflow, it can make it hard to know where to start and how to kind of embrace this. So let's start at the beginning with digital denture workflows. Any digital dentistry, whether it's a crown, a night guard, a denture, every digital dentistry workflow has a step that falls into one of three categories. You're either acquiring data, so a scan, a photo, an x-ray, an impression, an interocclusal record. You're designing something, so you're taking all of that data and putting it into design software. That's the CAD part of CAD/CAM, so computer aided design is step two. And then you're taking that design and making something physical, which is fabrication, or the CAM part of CAD/CAM, which is computer aided manufacturing. So with the denture world, that might look something like this. We're acquiring data, getting a good final impression, getting a good interocclusal record, getting our patient shade and photo, pulling all of that into the design software where we can do our virtual tooth arrangement, and then ultimately fabricating either a provisional or a final denture. I won't stay on this slide long. I teach the denture class to the second year dental students, and I took the denture class many times, so I know this can induce PTSD with a 5 appointment workflow, but this is what truly has been taught since the 1920s. And nothing really changed over time. We actually do still teach this side by side with the digital workflows, along with pretty much every dental school in the country. So here is kind of how we're switching from the conventional to the digital world. So everything is still there. It's just condensed. So we're not skipping any steps. We're not skipping any data. All the fundamentals are still important, but we're combining some of those together. So typically we're taking that jaw relation record or maxillomandibular relation record, whatever you might call it, and combining it either with phase one, which is the impressions, or combining it with phase two at the try-in. The average workflow is 2.38 visits. So we're going to share today some 2, 3, and 4 appointment workflows. So you can start to see how those might align. And it's going to vary from provider to provider and from patient to patient, which one of these workflows you'll choose. So again, typically we'll take those records, the jaw relation records, and combine it with an impression. And these are 2 sample workflows. We'll go through the wax rim workflow today that you see on the top. The bottom image is a proprietary workflow from Dentka. Or you can combine it with a try-in. And so this is showing the reference denture workflow that we'll spend a lot of time with in this presentation, as well as a Wagner workflow. So let's start at the step one, which is impressions. You can't make anything in prosthodontics without a great impression. You can't do a crown, an implant, denture, all in X, whatever you're doing, you have to start with impressions. And you can see for digital dentures, we have a lot of samples across the top here. We have alginates, we have PVS, and we have scans. And you can use any of these impressions to get started with your digital denture workflow. And I think that's one of the key concepts to understand as we go throughout is that you don't have to start with a scan. And truly, even today in 2025, the majority of digital denture workflows still start with a conventional impression. And I think that bears repeating because truly that's one of the biggest misconceptions I get from students, from patients, from clinicians is that it's hard to scan soft tissue. How do I get into the digital denture world? And so I feel like once you can kind of break through that barrier, understanding that you can start with that conventional impression technique, it will help illuminate the rest of the steps. And the way we jump from the conventional world to the digital world is by scanning that impression or a cast if you start with an alginate or if they come in with a cast already. And the key, I say this is the key to the kingdom, is digitizing those records. And there are many different ways to do this. You can start most commonly with a benchtop scanner. And so this is kind of the gold standard of record digitizing. It's utilizing a tabletop scanner. The great news is most clinicians don't have these in their in-house. So if you don't have one, you're normal. If you do have one, you're lucky. But the great news is most dental laboratories do have this type of scanner in-house. So whenever you send a conventional record to your dental laboratory, more often than not, they're putting them in a benchtop or a tabletop scanner, digitizing those and maintaining that record for you. You can also use an intraoral scanner and scan your physical records. So if you have a patient that comes in with a denture, or if you take a nice impression, you can actually use your intraoral scanner, scan that, and export that STL. More recently, there have been workflows where you can utilize a CBCT and actually put your prosthesis in the CT scanner and digitize it that way. This is a little bit more novel, and there's still kind of data looking at what are the indications and contraindications for this. The one that we have here is a care stream, and that will automatically output an STL. So you're not actually changing, like exporting a DICOM and flipping it over. It exports an STL. So no matter if you're doing an intraoral scanner, a benchtop scanner, or a CBCT scan, you're ending up in the same point with this STL file of your patient. You still can use your intraoral scanner and scan soft tissue. So if you prefer this workflow, this has been validated as well. The image you're seeing here is from 3Shape, and so this is utilizing their Trio scanner. Lucio LaRusso has done a ton of work on the accuracy and techniques for doing this. And if you see here, this is the scan pattern that he found with 3Shape was resulting in the most accurate impression. So if you're having trouble scanning and you're not getting stitched together right, here's a QR code it's a free article on the 3Shape site. They're not a sponsor. I do not speak for 3Shape. But if you take this, it's a really, really nice article, and it's all in color. I love anything with color photos, and I really love anything that's free. So again, this will kind of walk through how you do the scan pattern to try to achieve the most accuracy with your intraoral soft tissue scans. But no matter how you achieve your impression, whether it's an intraoral scan, whether it's a benchtop scan or an impression, you really, really need to make sure you're capturing all those anatomic landmarks. So no matter if it's a conventional denture, digital denture, no matter the workflow, make sure when you take that impression, you can see your patient's limiting structures, supporting structures, or tuberosity, incisive papilla. The software needs all those landmarks in order to output a denture that's going to fit and serve your patient well. So the workflows that we walk through are mostly going to be showing starting with an impression. There are a number of workflows that you can follow where you can start with a scan and then jump into either a digital or a conventional workflow and go back and forth, or you can stay digital all the way through. So once you've gotten your scan, you've started getting your records, the next big step in the sequence is going to be what we call the trial denture. And it can be any sort of trial denture that you want. Again, I love the versatility of the workflows. If you look at the conventional world on the right, we have a wax tooth setup. You can actually go to a conventional wax tooth setup, scan that in, and either finalize that way or preserve that wax tooth try-in digitally. That's a pretty cumbersome workflow that most people don't follow, but I like to show it because truly you can do literally anything you want with digital dentistry. On the left, you'll see the monolithic try-in. As we go through this presentation, I'm going to be focusing a lot on the monolithic try-in. I am a personal believer that this is going to be the future of all denture workflows. I'll be surprised if 20 years from now, we still have a wax option at most dental labs. And a lot of dental laboratories I've been working with are eliminating wax from their protocol because it's so much easier, more efficient, and you have preservation of records with a monolithic try-in. In the middle here, we have the Wagner try-in. I'm showing this more as kind of an educational piece. We have a lot of classically trained prosthodontists here at UNC, but we really wanted to get the digital workflow going on board. So we introduced this middle option so that we can still teach students how to move teeth and wax, but capitalize on the benefits of some digital denture properties. So with a Wagner try-in, you have teeth individually set in wax on the maxillary. You have wax rims on the mandibular, so you can do conventional methods for jaw relation records, as well as vertical dimension of occlusion and tooth arrangement. So again, monolithic trial denture, to me, this is the future of dentures. I spend a lot of time on this with my students in class. It's nice because it can be printed on any printer. So if you're running tight with your patient schedule and you need to get this tried in quickly, you can have your lab actually send you an STL and you can quickly print this in-house and go right to your patient. Um, but if you utilize an FDA cleared resin, an FDA cleared try-in resin, your patient can actually wear this home. And that unlocks a whole new array of possibilities for your patient. Because if you think about one of the most frustrating things I have with wax tooth try-ins is we put it in, we ask the patient to look at it for 10 minutes and say, okay, what do you think? Sign here, let's go to final. But they haven't had a chance to actually eat with it or speak with it because there's wax in the way, or they haven't gotten to take it home and show their friends and family. So your patient can actually wear this monolithic trial denture home, try it out, and truly take it for a test drive. It's like a prototype for an all-on-X, but you're doing a prototype for your denture. And so to me, this helps take dentures to the next level as you start really homing in on aesthetics, phonetics, and function. This is just showing again that Wagner trying a little bit more up close. This is not always the most cost-efficient workflow to utilize as a clinician, but I think it's a fantastic teaching tool and kind of, I call it the gateway digital denture as you go from the conventional world to the digital world. And then last but not least, again, we have the conventional wax tooth setup. This is the most cost intensive from both financial side as well as time. Prosthodontists really like this because again, we can move all the teeth individually. But I think once you overcome that hurdle and really learn to work with a monolithic trial denture, there's a lot of ways where you can still get that same satisfaction of getting the teeth exactly where you want them. And I like to show this also because when you think about a wax tooth setup, one of the great things about it is these are the final denture teeth. So the patient really gets to see the final shape and shade of the teeth that are going to be in the definitive denture. But the downside is these are the final denture teeth. And so if the occlusion is incorrect, you have the option of moving all the teeth chair side or sending it back to the lab to do another tooth arrangement because you can't grind on these the way you can grind on a monolithic denture. So I think that's one of the biggest hurdles to overcome as a clinician. If you haven't worked a lot with a monolithic trial denture, we've had this ingrained in us in dental school that you can't grind on these denture teeth. And so it kind of pains us to start grinding on the monolithic try-in because we have to get through that paradigm shift. So just remember that the monolithic try-in has some properties that are kind of like a clinical try-in and some properties that are like a wax rim. So no matter which try-in you choose, it doesn't matter if it's the fully printed or fully in wax, you have the same goals. You want to establish a patient's aesthetics, establish a patient's occlusal relationship, and move forward so you can start to find where those denture teeth are supposed to be. So we have these three records that we need to achieve to send to our dental laboratories, which will be the vertical record, which we sometimes call the vertical dimension of occlusion. So that's how tall should the dentures be? What's the space between the maxilla and the mandible? You have the horizontal record, which is what we call our interocclusal record. And there are several different types. So you can do MIP, you can do CR, you can do neuromuscular. Most of the time with dentures, we're going to live in the centric relation world. If you think about occlusion, there's three things that determine your occlusal position. One is your jaw joint, one is your muscles, and one is your teeth. When you have a denture patient, you don't have teeth. So you've already eliminated that variable. So you can rely on either the jaw joint or the muscles. The muscles don't usually have a repeatable position. If you're sitting up, they go one way. If you're laying down, they go one way. If you're stressed, they go one way. If you're relaxed, they go one way. So we like to rely on our TMJ or our jaw joint to kind of give us that horizontal position of where the mandible should be in relationship to the maxilla. So that's why dentures, we live in the centric relation world. So typically we'll get a vertical dimension of rest, a vertical dimension of occlusion. We'll get a centric relation record, and we'll get an orientation record. Now, in the conventional world, this orientation record is your face bow or your ear bow. There are very fancy ways where you can try to do a face bow and transfer that data into the digital realm. However, typically our orientation record for digital dentures is going to be a full face photograph. So we'll show that as we go through cases. You want to take a photo of your patient facing forward. You want to see their eyes and you want to see their ears. So you don't want your patient to turn to this side or this side. You want them looking straight at you so that you can orient that intraoral scan with your patient's photo.